Namaskar everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. It is estimated that there are about 1.5 to 4 million waste pickers in urban areas of India. I say estimated because there is a lack of accurate data because waste pickers belong to the informal sector. But we see them all the time. We see them in our cities, walking on roads, with their little bag on their shoulder, on highways, in crowded shopping, around crowded shopping malls, traffic intersections, stooping down on waste dumps and trying to scavenge whatever they can. Let me tell you a little bit about a day in the life of a waste picker. The day begins pretty early, somewhere between 4 and 5 in the morning. A waste picker has to finish her household work and quickly head out to her designated pickup points. And why? Because otherwise she can lose the good waste. What is good waste? Good waste is anything that can be sold at the end of the day for money. So it includes plastic bottles, bubble wraps, it includes paper, cardboard, anything which she can use to buy her groceries, provisions for the day, and get through any other emergencies that she may be dealing with at that point in time. It's very important that she hit that waste dump before somebody else hits it, otherwise that good waste gets skimmed away. But in order to do that, she has to brave the weather. So whether it's peak summer or chilling outside, she still has to go out. She has to wade through a mixed pile of waste. She has to make sure that she doesn't get injured. She has to also try to be safe from stray animals that may be feeding on that waste. So what does that pile typically contain? It contains everything that we use in our day-to-day life. So we have food that we have thrown, we have vegetable peels, fruits, cardboard, broken pieces of glass, metal, e-waste, rubber, sometimes dead carcasses of animals. We also have a lot of sanitary waste. Now what in sanitary waste? Sanitary napkins, dirty sanitary napkins, adult and children diapers, condoms, tampons. Now we also have COVID waste. So you have COVID waste from sick patients, you have preventive COVID waste. It's all there in that pile. And so she has to wade through that pile and quickly take whatever she can and get to her next stop and her next stop and her next stop. Because like her, there are so many who are walking on that particular circuit. So she does that. She remains steeped in waste throughout the day, and she goes from one point to the other. And then she has to find a spot, somewhere around 2:30 or 3, find a spot where she can lay out whatever she has collected during the day and segregate it. Because only when she segregates it, she'll be able to take it to the waste dealer and earn some money. Now you know that there is no water, there is no sanitation, no source of any hygiene access for these ladies. So they're doing this all the time. So even if their hands are dirty, they just have to manage with whatever they have or just use whatever rags they can find and go on. Finding a spot on the road is also a challenge because sometimes you may get, come in the way of some local elements who may not want you, whatever it is. They have to just get through this and get that money and move on. I met a lot of them, and their memories and their stories are vividly etched in my mind. So I met a 60-year-old who had been doing this for 3 decades. She said she didn't even remember how long she had done it. But she was doing this day in and day out. She showed me her hands and her feet. There were cuts and bruises. And she said that, look, we don't have any fixed income. Forget healthcare. So every 6 months or so, she would just go get a tetanus shot. And she said, I do this every day. Whether it's a holiday, festival, it doesn't matter. Festival even better. Maybe I can get more waste. And the only thing that she craves for is her bed and a hot bath at the end of the day. She says, I don't have a choice. If I didn't have this cavity called a stomach, I perhaps would have had the luxury to think about my feelings. I've lost the sense of taste and smell because I just don't let myself think about it. There was also a young woman with an infant strapped to her chest, and she did it because she had to survive in order to keep that baby ready and be able to see the world. There was also a mother with her teenage daughter, and she was taking her daughter with her because it was safer for her to take her daughter rather than to leave her behind in the slum where they lived. So these are stories, names may differ, but the stories are the same, and there's the same common underlying theme: poverty, lack of opportunity, the need to survive, and also being marginalized, because once they get into this kind of waste, they can't find mainstream work. They cannot be employed. They generally are not employed as domestic help in households. So they sort of get restricted to the work they do. And in a way, it's also inflation and a sort of a risk-free, because there's always waste. As long as there's the last human on this earth, we'll have waste. And there's abundance of it. A very critical role in recycling is played by the waste pickers, but unfortunately, they belong to the marginalized section of our society. Their situation had become even worse during COVID lockdown, because although waste picking, collection was permitted because it was considered to be an essential service, waste dealerships were closed. So whatever waste they could collect, they were not in a position to sell and get that money, and these women live day to day. Whatever they earn is used for that day, and whatever they earn the next day is just a puzzle. So with all these dealerships being closed, these women were really in a very bad shape. Some of them were reduced to begging, depending on their relatives, friends, or just banking on whatever savings they had. Now, if this seems like a complex problem, it is. And I have spent a lot of time researching it, getting frustrated, and also still getting back there and going out there every single day. There are a lot of dimensions to this problem, but some of the main dimensions to this problem, if we kind of break this problem statement up, are there's an environmental angle, there's a policy angle, there's a human rights angle, there's a social angle, and there's an economic angle. Now we can further break this down. If we look at it a little bit more, we'll find that what are the common kind of things that we see? One is that there is a sort of a lack of interest in segregation of waste. So there's this not in my backyard attitude. So as long as my house or my premises or my area is clean, I don't really care where the waste goes. As long as it's not inside, it's not in my mind. Then there is also this angle of policy. So we have a policy framework, or our solid waste management rules, which were notified in 2016, which form the guiding framework for all the activities which are undertaken by the civic authorities. So the implementation of these rules, the taxpayer funds, the human rights sort of piece, what happens, what about the gender issue, what about the treatment of these women, what happens to this waste, what are the touch points, what happens to the taxpayer funds. Now, if you put all these big themes as well as these other themes together, we realize that this is a very deeply interwoven and an integrated and a complex issue. Finding a solution to this in a completely, holistic way is difficult. I will today try to explain one piece of this puzzle or one piece of this problem to you, and I'll take the example of sanitary waste, which I talked about briefly earlier. So as I said, sanitary waste comprises of a lot of different other categories, such as soiled sanitary pads, diapers, tampons, condoms. Now, why talk about sanitary waste? For once, sanitary waste demonetizes the other categories of waste. So our solid waste management rules require us to segregate waste into two categories. That is the organic, or what we call the wet waste. That's all whatever we use in our kitchen. If that is channelized properly, we can convert it into compost, which is very rich in nutrients and which can again be used to grow food. So it has great relevance in a country like India, which is basically, there is a very large need in the farming sector for this particular sort of organic approach to farming. But now if this comes in contact with sanitary waste, its entire value is lost. It becomes rubbish, completely useless. Then you have the other portion for which these waste pickers toil throughout the day. That is your recyclable portion. That too gets completely demonetized if it comes in contact with sanitary waste, because it contains human excreta, body fluids, blood. And not only that, these women run a very high risk of contracting contagious diseases. And they are more often than not the only earning member in their family. Remember, nobody wants to become a waste picker out of choice. They become a waste picker because they have no other choice. So that is the problem with sanitary waste. So then the question is, what is being done, or what is the current way of dealing with this? So the current way of dealing with this is that it is thrown along with our household waste in the urban context. Here too, there are two dimensions, the urban context and the rural context. In the urban context, if it gets through our municipal waste collection mechanism, and if it's wrapped securely, chances are that it will tear by the time it reaches a waste picker or a waste handler. So we are back to the same situation. Now, our Indian solid waste management rules require brand owners to provide pouches, disposal pouches for sanitary napkins, but that's not being done by them. The other thing that our rules require is that these manufacturers and these leading brand names should be in a position to collect back the waste that is generated by their brands. This is also not being done by them at the moment. So what are the numbers involved? Why is this so important? Okay, so in urban India, about 1 billion pads are thrown every month. And this is again an approximate number. It is estimated that a woman uses around 10,000 pads from the onset of menstruation to the point that she reaches menopause. Approximately 10,000 pads per woman, 1 billion pads in urban area per month. Every pad contains roughly equivalent of 3 to 4 bags of plastic. Why is that? Because by the time you take the SAP, or the super absorbent polymer, which is there and touted very loudly by all the marketing companies, SAP, the wings, the adhesives, the packaging, all is about 3 to 4 bags of plastic. Each pad, even if it reaches a landfill, takes about 500 to 800 years to break down into small pieces of plastic. This plastic enters the food chain. And if it enters the food chain, you know what happens? We have a very high chance of consuming that. These pads also get thrown out into the open. They get thrown out into water bodies. In rural areas, the situation is even worse, because in rural areas, there is no formal waste management collection system in place. And there are also social taboos which are associated with menstruation. So you have women who may be throwing these in water bodies, burning them, burying them, or just putting them behind some shrubbery. But in any case, they enter our common areas, or what we call common pool resources: water, land, or air. And in all the three scenarios, if they are not disposed of carefully, then they are very, very dangerous. In rural areas, they're also being promoted by the government. So it's like a double whammy. These areas don't have the mechanism to deal with these products, and they are being pushed because of welfare measures. So we have a very dangerous situation going on. So the other thing that is touted in the urban context today is incineration. So you have a lot of incinerator companies which have got onto this bandwagon and are marketing incinerators under the name of eco-friendly, green, sustainable, and women for women, and in the name of women. But the catch here is that incineration needs to be done very carefully, very scientifically, and at designated temperatures. And the reason for that is that if incineration is not done at the designated temperatures and using the right equipment, we run a risk of having harmful dioxins and furans in the air, which are actually very harmful to humans. So we are actually solving one problem and creating another one. And I have not at all spoken about diapers here at all, because we don't have data about diapers. And diapers contain excreta. So you can just imagine now on the other side, we even have that particular issue. So we tried, in order to understand this issue, we tried conducting an awareness building and a sensitization campaign in a residential complex in the PCMC area, which has about 4,000 residents. And they are already people who are already into sustainability because they were segregating their waste. And therefore, we did a red dot campaign. And we were very pleasantly surprised that we got the support of the local corporator, who's also a woman, and she agreed to fund 15 lakh red dot paper stickers, which could be affixed on the newspaper when women were throwing these pads. So it was something which we were really grateful for, and we saw that there is a lot of support. So there are communities which are very sensitive and are willing to do this. Now there are, things which we can learn from this. One is that if we devise a kind of a composite or a comprehensive approach, or try to at least make an effort in that direction, what can be achieved and what are some of the holes that we can plug? So in the course of our research, and after taking into account all of this, we have conceptualized a model where we have developed an integrated approach which requires community participation, which requires participation by the stakeholders, but by using technology as an enabler, as something that we can use to close some of these gaps, using technologies such as blockchain, for example, where it's difficult to manipulate data, using technology like artificial intelligence, for example, where it's possible to sense some waste categories without having to physically touch those waste categories, Internet of Things, mobile apps, and GIS. We feel that we can create a solution or a system where we are able to tie all the stakeholders together. So what will that accomplish? What that will accomplish is that the journey of this waste, sanitary napkins right now, can be minimized. So if this waste is dealt with, or it's incinerated, or it's managed in a proper way, as close to the point of creation, then the touch points of this waste and the possible damage that it can inflict can be minimized. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that brand owners who are making these products and benefiting from those products, and who have the moral obligation and the duty and are required to do this as per the laws of our country, will have to then pay for picking up and managing that waste. The third is these waste pickers can get a dignified livelihood and get a proper working condition and get paid for the effort that they do. The fourth is that the taxpayer funds, which are now being used for managing waste, and remember, almost 60 to 70% of any municipal corporation's budget is spent just on waste collection and disposal. So if some of that is paid for by the companies, then those taxpayer funds can be used for fixing other things. For example, public infrastructure when it comes to women's toilets is very poor. If one tries to use a common women's toilet outside, chances are that there will be something or the other there which will make it unusable. So it can be used to fix that particular main source of personal hygiene. And what will also happen is that communities that are participating in this exercise will also get recognized and rewarded for the effort that they undertake. Right now, even if people are undertaking an effort, they are doing so out of their own sense of motivation. Now, we have to remember that this problem is too large to be solved all of a sudden, and it requires an integrated approach where all the stakeholders who are there in the waste value chain, right from the producers, the users, the collectors, the people in authority, they all work together to be able to find a solution. So there have been several times where I've felt that it's just impossible, and it's just difficult, frustrating, it's depressing. But every time I've felt that way, and I've thought of the faces and the names and the stories of the people that I've met in this journey for 3 years, and also because of the fact that I myself am a mother and a woman, and I've seen what they have gone through, I feel that it's my duty to at least try to make a little bit of a difference. So every time I've thought that I just can't, and it's just not possible, somehow there's been a little voice inside me which says that you have to and you can. There is absolutely no choice. So thank you for this opportunity today.